Today I'm going to share with you 3 tips or hacks on how to maintain a good weight and a healthy gut. To be honest, it's not really a big secret either. In fact, people in the 1970s used it with no problems to effortlessly maintain their weight and to stay slim. If you're new here, I'm a family medicine doctor, and on this channel we discuss medical topics and lifestyle. Like and subscribe for more videos like this. It goes a long way. Obesity. It really started to skyrocket towards the 1980s, especially in places like North America. Before that, people were pretty much eating whatever they wanted without having a great impact on them. Kids were carrying around lunch bags to school with basic sandwiches, basic snacks, basic juice boxes. And the sandwiches were white bread, a piece of meat in between. Nobody was carrying around fancy protein bars or spinach smoothies or couscous or quinoa or anything like that. So why were these people not getting fat? What was the secret? Whereas today we have this big focus on all these foods, but obesity is ever more on the rise. The fitness trends weren't around back then either. There wasn't this social media obsession with sugar, fat, protein, micro dosing of magnesium or anything like that. People had no access to social media. They just listened to their parents, ate what they ate, and got on with their day. So why so little obesity back then? Well, it's because habits change since the 1970s. People didn't eat all the time like we do now. Let me say it again. Don't eat all the time. Basically, there's 2 questions you have to ask yourself. How often are you eating? And what are the foods that you're eating? Is it really the quantity and the quality? Yes, it is. It really is. If you eat an unhealthy meal by today's standards, the ultra-processed stuff, if you eat it once, chances are you will be okay. But if you eat it all the time, then that spells trouble, especially in today's world where the food is even more processed than what it used to be. This isn't the 1980s anymore. Food has more additives and other garbage inside. And like I said, habits are different. We don't eat 3 times a day like back in the day. Now we eat 6 times a day. We eat at the desk, we eat in the bus, we eat in the car, we eat in front of the TV. My mom didn't give me snacks between meals. Eating less also allows your gut to rest and not to be awake all the time, which is really important for gut health. So what are the foods that you are eating and how often are you eating them? This leads us to our 3 tips. So let's get started with tip number 1. Tip number 1 has nothing to do with food actually. The tip is to exercise, but not for the reason you may think. Exercise isn't actually that good for weight loss or effective as a weight loss tool. The cliche line is weight loss is done in the kitchen and not in the gym. This rings true. Number of calories burned during exercise isn't all that big. It's small compared to how much we eat in the day, especially in today's world, like I mentioned before with all the snacking. The trick with exercise is that it takes time, it occupies time. It takes your mind off of food, it makes you more present, more intentional, and more gracious in what you are doing. You're not thinking about food all the time that way. There's no snacking or anything like that. Your body is just focusing, and the muscles are focusing, and your mind is focusing on everything but food. This is a good way to keep your mind off of food. Exercise, it can also take you to nature, for example, if you go for a walk or a hike and things like that. And it's proven that spending time in nature helps with stress, which in turn makes you have a healthier lifestyle, which is what we're all about on this channel, to be honest. Hobbies and purpose get stimulated as well. Spending time with family, friends, all of these things push us in that direction. Overall, shifting your focus on other things and not constantly thinking about food. So it goes way, way more than just the calories burned. Let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is to try and simplify your food. This one is tricky because it's twofold. Keeping your food boring, in a way, it limits the variety. That's right. But you will end up eating less. Let me explain. When you order takeout, the next day you feel like eating less. It's because it's the same meal. But if you throw it in a pan and spice it up and add some new ingredients, then it's like a new meal and you'll eat it again. We eat because we're hungry, but we also eat because the food is super tasty, super delicious, especially in today's world with how processed it is. That's on purpose. Food is delicious, we enjoy it. We eat for 2 reasons, for hunger and for pleasure, but eating the same foods makes the pleasure go down a bit, so we can use that to our advantage. That is also a factor in restrictive diets, so things like eating carnivore or all those kinds of things. It's because it makes the diet a bit boring, and eating less variety, you eat less at the end of the day. But there's a balance because variety is a key to gut health and the microbiome, so we have to keep that in mind. So that leads us to the tip within the tip. Eat natural food, single ingredients. Processed food is designed to be addictive. Additives, sugar, MSG, all that nonsense makes food hyperpalatable and wants to make you eat non-stop, whereas natural food is simple ingredients, one ingredient. So I would say keep your food boring and with less variety, but only in the ultra-processed sense. Keep your food varied so you can keep enjoying it, but the variety comes from whole single ingredient food. Add that variety, ditch the variety of ultra-processed nonsense, and this will help your weight and it will help your gut. Now let's move on to tip number 3. The third tip is to reduce the amount of carbs you are eating. This can sometimes bring you into the territory of eating more fat, but that can be an advantage to us. So if you're a person with crazy hunger, crazy cravings, really struggling to control your appetite, then this tip applies to you most of all. The body uses food as fuel. So it doesn't matter if it's carbs or fats, it will get used up. But getting the body to eat fat and rely on fat as a fuel instead of the carbs, it can be interesting because it makes the body make a bit of a transition. And with that transition or transformation, it can make it easier to fast and go longer periods of time without actually eating. Your body gets used to it, basically. So let's say you meet up for Thanksgiving or Christmas and eat like crazy, all these carbs. Then you go back to work and back to reality. It's easy to lean back into the carbs as a crutch as you want to snack and have those cravings. But if you ate fat, let's say, then this may reduce those cravings. In the first few days, it's tough and you will eat a little bit more fat as the body is getting used to this transition. But then that balances out and you are eating less and more of a balanced diet. The idea is to avoid the hunger by eating high-fat food, but we can't go overboard with this. Like with everything, there's a fine balance. So I'm not saying go crazy, eat all the fat you can, but you can eat healthier fat alternatives. So eggs, bacon, salmon, leafy greens, olive oil, avocado, sardines, bone broth. Nuts and dairy are cool, but don't go overboard with them as they are snackable, and that's the stuff we want to avoid. So there's a fine balance there. Even if you eat a large amount in the first few days, it will taper off and the balance will come and the hunger will be less. So the point of the story is that you shouldn't eat all the time and you should watch out what you eat. Try not to eat all the time. Try to stick with whole foods. Your body and gut will love you for it, as well as your mind. It may be difficult in today's world with all the crazy food, fast food. I mean, there's even Subway and fast food chains in hospitals, which is crazy, at the hospital entrance. But don't eat all the time. Watch what you eat. You can do it, and I'll see you in the next video.